So I'm just starting the video. There we go. And we are going to start into the next chapter. So the next chapter is chapter number 8, and this is organizational structure and design. We've kind of danced around this one from time to time throughout the entire course. One of the fascinating things is you have very scarce resources available to you. Whatever they happen to be that a manager has, could be the equipment, it could be the desk space, it could be floor space per se, it could be the employees that you have available to you. Whatever it happens to be, your resources need to be implemented in such a way that you get a really good effect from them. So I often call it getting a return, because however you apply it, or however you invest those resources, you always want to get some kind of major return that is beyond what you've actually implemented. So this chapter is going to deal with organizational structure. So let's take a look at it. And remember, yesterday was planning. So once you've actually put all your ducks in a row and you have them fundamentally designed as the way you would like it, then it's time to organize everything. So there's a few questions we're going to answer. The first one is organizing as a management function. Exactly what is that? And if we can understand what the organization is, then we have to understand the strategies that are involved in putting together that organization. So this also means, what are the traditional types of organizational structure? Excuse me, and what are the newer organizational structures? How do we implement these in a strategic way? And the last question we want to answer is, how are organizational designs changing the workplace? And I'll give you some examples as we go along. So the first question is, what is organizing and as a management function? What exactly is it all about? And the first thing is, we have those rare materials and those resources. They're scarce resources because you only have so much of it. That includes your budget, by the way, because you only have a certain financial nest egg in which to draw from. So it's the process of arranging the people and other resources to work together to accomplish your end result, whatever that happens to be. Excuse me. Organizational structure, it's the system we're going to use. So there's going to be very specific strategic ways of applying our investment of our resources. And we're looking for the best possible combination. So, and again, task, workflows, the reporting relationship and communications channels that link together diverse individuals and groups. Again, so that they are functioning as a single unit, all working towards the same outcome. Excuse me. I just ate, so once again, here's a little map again. We're breaking it down. We did planning yesterday, organizing today, then we'll do controlling and leading. So once again, organizing is, we need to separate the different functions and isolate them in a sense, but also have throughput between them, and arranging those resources so that people can actually use them in a very productive way. Coordinating the activities, in other words, ensuring that the activities are actually being done and being done when they need to be done. So let's take a look. The formal structures, and this is historical in many ways as well, the structure of organizing for, let's say, the official state. So organizing in its official state, an organizational chart is a diagram displaying, let's say, how you've actually organized your particular company. President at the top, senior managers, and then let's say middle management, and then we go down the list according to how many layers there are within an organization. An organizational chart identifies the following aspects. So one, how work is actually divided. Remember, we have input and we have output, and something has to happen in between. So how we divide that up so that it actually accomplishes what we're trying to resolve as an outcome. So that's the division of work. And we'll also look at the supervisory relationships and the communications channels, the major subunits within a department. Let's just say accounting. So within accounting, we have, let's say we have the regular bookkeeping functions. We also have accounts receivable, accounts payable, and you may have inventory control and payroll and a variety of other areas as well, breaking it down deeper and deeper and deeper. So the major subunits and also the levels of management. How many actual levels will there be, and what will be the responsibility of each level, and how many people will they be expected to, let's say, supervise? You also have the informal structure. This is the shadow organization made up of unofficial but often critical working relationships between the members within your particular departments or organization. Potential advantage of informal structure. Well, these are the assistants. These are also the, let's say, secretaries who assist in the background. This is helping people accomplish what they need to achieve, overcoming the limits of formal structure, in other words, being the go-betweens between the various departments, gaining access to interpersonal networks, and also informal learning, once again, sharing the information through communications. And also potential disadvantages of this informal structure. It may actually work against the organization. Again, it depends on whether or not it's very well implemented. Or it can provide, let's say, walls or barriers between departments. Susceptibility to rumor, which is that grapevine philosophy, and also may carry inaccurate information. Again, this informal structure may not actually be helping the company, but may be working against the company. And again, it depends on what kind of information is being circulated by those individuals who are part of it. This could be the peers you're working with in the department. Are they providing you with the accurate information or information that is somehow erroneous? And also division of work efforts from important objectives. Again, you could actually find yourself doing a variety of different tasks, feeling of alienation by outsiders. These are all some of the unfortunate or disadvantages of an informal structure. And again, an informal structure can be the assistants to managers, or it could just simply be the peers that you're working with within the environment. So if we really want to break it down, we have to understand what the traditional model is and then what the new model is. So let's take a look at the traditional. The functional structures, people with similar skills and also performing similar tasks, they're usually put together in one form or another. Let's say that you're in the accounting department and therefore you're doing accounts receivable, but everybody who's doing any function within accounting, they are all separated. They're all part of the same group and they're all together, but they're separate inside of that particular group. So we call it a functional structure. Members work in their functions, area of expertise, but usually together in one form or another, are not limited to businesses. This is true. And also work well for small organizations producing few products or services. And again, you're basically doing and working within the environment for your particular the focus being your function, whatever it happens to be. So it kind of gives us an example of this philosophy where we can actually break it down a little bit. And they've broken it down graphically to give you an example. President on top. Presidents are always associated with administration. So they are the head of the administrative branch of any company. The presidents, vice presidents underneath them are usually proportioned according to their discipline. So you have marketing, finance, production, human resources, sales, etc. And they would actually have somebody in charge of each department. Therefore, they can specialize. And again, this is a functional department. So marketing is a function, finance is a function, and separating them and having the staff that are all connected with that one function is to the advantage of the company. Branch managers, again, we break it down once more, managers of each and every one of these particular branches. And once again, they are associated with their particular function. Hospitals, again, hospitals are very clearly defined based on category of discipline. And in this case here, medical staff, nursing, clinics, and also patient services. The staff for each may be in various locations, but it's always broken within those locations to the function. So people are kept within their groups, so to speak. Some of the disadvantages, of course, well, economics of scale is a big one, because let's face it, if a company if it was a larger company and it happened to have 20 or 30 people all working within a particular department, you would have to have them broken into their own little sections. And larger companies, the same thing. Economics of scale comes into this, and also task assignments consistent with expertise and training. Again, you have to focus the people on what they're supposed to be doing within that particular area. High quality technical problem solving and also in-depth training and skill development become issues in this particular area, but it's easier to do it. And also clear career paths within the function. When you're working within the same department and they're all doing fundamentally the same category of business, such as we'll pick on the accounting again, you're working in accounts receivable and there's an opportunity in accounts payable or in another facet entirely, age counts or something. Well, you would actually be able to move within that department. So there's a greater opportunity, much better training. And once again, the big shot here is the economics of scale. The disadvantages in this situation is the difficulties in fundamentally determining who is responsible. So in other words, pinpointing responsibilities. And a functional chimney problem, which we'll talk about a little bit later as well, a sense of cooperation and also common purpose breakdown, and of course, narrow view of performance objectives. Excessive upward referrals of decisions. Once again, we're using this philosophy of the chimney, and we're literally pushing ideas from one level higher and higher within the organization. And sometimes it doesn't work quite the way we would like it to. Phenomenal. Where are we? There we go. So divisional structure, one thing we can often do is break a company into small sections, and that allows us to control it a little bit better. So grouping together the people who are fundamentally doing exactly the same process makes a lot of sense. Economics actually comes into this in a very big way. Serve similar customers, well, we want them together. We don't want them mixing with, let's say we have salespeople, some salespeople are dealing with small customer acquisitions and others are dealing with fleets. where you're buying thousands of something. So we don't really want them working side by side. We would like them to be in the same department, but on different sides of the room so that they're not interfering with one another. And also common and complex organizations that we do break it down rather discreetly so that it is very definitive as to what particular areas are actively doing. Avoiding problems associated with functional structure. Again, we want to make sure that we are defining it very carefully. Back in here. So here's a divisional structure based on product, geography, customer, and process. Sometimes you have to break your company down in ways that you can put people together who are working upon the same philosophy or the same type of activities. And it makes it easier. It also makes it economically more viable. So here we have product. If we break it down divisionally by product or geography or customer or process, it means that the staff is geared towards and trained towards, and they are functioning towards that particular aspect. So the focus in the product is goods and also service produced. And therefore, they give you an example of the general manager, the grocery products, the drugs and toilets. They've broken it down a little bit so that people know where to go, who to talk to. And of course, the people in those departments, or that one department, I should say, are highly trained to do their particular function. And that also goes for geography as well, as we often notice different areas within either the country or internationally, they function totally differently. And therefore, you need to have different rules applied or different staff and different capabilities. Customers, well, once again, they give you a really good example here of either youth or seniors. They don't buy the same way. They often need different information, and therefore you have customer service who actually can deal with these issues. And they're dealing with them specifically based on the client that they're going to communicate with. And for process, again, they're only giving you an example here, but there could be 20, 30 different functional aspects to this. But the division is broken down by process, and therefore this is for the purchasing and also for maybe packaging and maybe for creation and maybe for fulfillment. It could be for delivery. We can have all of these different elements here for process. So keep these four in mind: product, geography, customer, and process. So once again, these four: product, geography, customer, and process, they all focus primarily, their entire resources are focused entirely in that particular way to deal with that particular area. Virtually every larger company is divided in this particular way in one form or another, but it may be nested as well, where you actually have these divisions within the company actually coexisting with other divisions. So nested one within the other. And that may be because of, let's say, geography. So geography, you may actually have a customer structure. You may also have process or product as well. Some of the advantages of divide and conquer, in other words, divisionalize your business. And we're really talking about larger businesses. Smaller businesses, it doesn't work very well, simply because sometimes one person does 4 or 5 different functions. So in a larger company, an individual does a single function. They have only one job. So in this case here, some of the advantages of this would be more flexibility and responding to environmental changes. Again, we can tailor that particular division to achieve whatever it needs to achieve specifically for the function of that particular group. Improving coordination, also clearing points of responsibility. We can actually see a hierarchical structure within that particular division, and also expertise focused on specific customer products and regions. Again, we can break it down very carefully. And greater ease in restructuring the organization, so I can redefine it, break it down even further if I need to. So those are the advantages. The disadvantages, of course, is a conundrum, which is that duplication factor. One of the problems you often run into, let's just say that I have a main office in, let's say, Brampton, and then in Toronto, I have a satellite location because we wanted to have salespeople closer to the customer, or we want to have an accounting department like accounts payable or receivable closer to the customer or supplier. Well, that means that the main office will have accounting staff and sales staff, but so will all the satellite locations as well. So it becomes duplication. And also competition and poor coordination across the divisions. They don't always communicate very well. And that's one of the problems. It's almost like putting great walls between each one of the functions of a company. You often find they don't communicate well with one another, especially when you have satellite locations. Let's say they have maybe a staff of 1,000 people, and yet at the same time, they don't want to communicate with the main office because they see themselves as being separate. Emphasis on divisional goals at the expense of the whole organization. Once again, a manager is trying to outperform for their department and having their resources do the best job they can. And therefore, there's often competition between the various parts of the organization, which is not good for the company, but it happens anyhow, simply because, once again, they're trying to achieve something for their particular organization within their departments. The matrix structure, I want you to remember this one because this will come up during your final. Matrix is an interesting philosophy. Combines functional and divisional structures to gain the advantage and minimize disadvantages of each one of them. It happens within all sectors. So manufacturing, service industries, professional fields, nonprofit sectors, multinational corporations. A matrix is a combination of everything, and it is usually a little bit of different elements. So you could actually have a situation, and I'm just going to go to the extreme here, where you can actually draw people from one department and put them into another department when you're in need of something. This is a matrix structure. Normally, it's not a regular manager, okay? This is usually a project manager who is working on a single project, and therefore they have the power to draw from all the different departments. It often happens. It's not a well-liked approach in some of the older companies because, remember, your manager is paying your salary, but now it's another manager who is controlling your efforts. So in this case, yep.
Are project managers contracted to the company, or are they hired by the company, like salaried?
Can be both. It can definitely be both. Many companies do have project managers on staff. They are not experts in any one field, but they're experts in putting projects together. And therefore, this is why they draw from other departments. So let's just say, Keston, that you're working in the marketing department, and Qutisha is working in the finance department, and they decide they want to create a brand spanking new product. Well, they'll have one of their managers who's a project manager, usually certified as a project manager, because it's a different kind of management. It's putting teams together of dissimilar skills, and they're going to draw the employees they need for as long as they need only. So if they need you for 3 days, they draw you for 3 days, and then you go back to your regular department. Of course, the manager in your regular department isn't going to be very happy because they're paying you and you're working for another manager. You get the idea? Let me give you an example of a project. Let's just say that I wanted to create a brand new chocolate bar. Okay, I want to create a new chocolate bar. I think I gave you this example before. A project manager is assigned to the project, and their job is to determine whether or not there is any viability behind coming up with a new chocolate bar. So they call the marketing department and they draw a couple of their expert employees over, and then they call the distribution center and the salespeople, and then they contact the finance department and somebody comes in, and now they have a little team, and they just want to determine whether or not there's viability behind it. As soon as they determine that there is or there isn't, then they release those people by bringing other people in, such as number one, a chemist. They may have to bring in some cooks. They may have to bring in some material experts who know acquisition, supply chain people. Each one of them is going to be brought in for a different period of time in order to share what they know about that particular industry. Eventually, after maybe a year or so, they have actually produced a brand new product. Once the chemist says that the chemistry is okay, and once the packaging people have decided that the color combination, and they've done some testing on color, they've done some testing on the smell of the chocolate, because different chocolates have different smells. And this is chemistry, by the way, so they need a chemist as well. By the time they finish, a new chocolate bar hits the shelf. But there's a big process of many different people coming in and going out of the team. So project managers have a lot of power inside of a company. They can draw people as they need them, whereas the regular managers, they have to hire them, they have to hold on to them for just their function. But you often end up working for somebody else for a short period of time. That's why they call it a matrix, because you can draw from any one of the different departments. Does that kind of make sense a little bit? Am I making sense with it?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. How about the rest of you? Super duper. Okay. So a matrix is what actually gives many tech companies super advantage. And the reason, once again, is because you don't have to hire people for a project. You already have them in the company. It's just a question of get them working within a team for a short period of time, and then send them back to their department again and put somebody else into it to carry the project forward constantly. So we call this a matrix structure. And it's a really important concept. Companies today use these matrices much more than they ever did before. So some of the advantages, once again, better cooperation because you're bringing people together, and also improves decision making because you have the right people. Remember, you're bringing them in and they're experts in their particular departments. Increasing flexibility and restructuring because you can manipulate, send them back, grab somebody else, and also better customer service because you have the right people. Better performance accountability, and also improving strategic management. Again, the project managers are the ones who are running this whole thing, and they're basically bringing in the needed resources from within the company, and sometimes from even outside. They may actually hire people as consultants to assist. Sometimes a company doesn't have their own project managers, so they'll hire from outside. If you want to do a little research on project management, it is a certification that you go through. It's a process. I've looked at the books. I've even taught some of the courses a few years ago. It's a very complex course, but it's an extremely good one. You can almost always find a job in that particular field. Potential disadvantages, this is the biggie. Remember, you have a manager who has hired people. They want you to do a job because that's why they hired you. But now you're being sucked away into another project department in a sense, and they're using your services while your boss is still paying you. So there's this two boss system. Who is responsible? And there's a bit of a power struggle that goes on. Two boss system can create all kinds of confusion. Who are you supposed to respond to? Who should you be doing work for? And why aren't you getting the work done? Team meetings are time consuming. Got news for you. Team meetings happen too frequently, but they do so in order to speed the project up. Team may develop groupets, which is a bad thing. Groupets are when people seem to click together and they exclude everybody else within the team. This is a bad thing, a very bad thing. You often want to break it up as quickly as possible. This is like having students in a classroom and you'll find 2 or 3 of them sitting together, but everybody else will be on the other side of the room. It makes me laugh, but at the same time, it's not a good thing because they don't click with the rest of them. And sometimes the other ones and even themselves can actually help one another. They just don't see it that way, and it's unfortunate. But in a corporate environment, you can't allow it, period. So the next question we want to take a look at is what's new? What's happening? What are the newer types of organizational structure? Extensively used, these are the team structures. Teams have become really important. I'll be honest with you, when I was a teenager, most companies did not like this philosophy. They wanted you to work at your job, put your nose to the grindstone, and don't look up. In other words, just do your job. But nowadays, we really look at it because there's been an awful lot of research in this area that teams are highly effective. With a team environment similar to the project philosophy of a matrix, we have people with dissimilar capabilities within that particular team, and they can actually outproduce. Let's say you have 10 people in a team, 10 people in one team as opposed to 10 individuals can actually accomplish a tremendous amount as a team. So extensively use permanent and also temporary teams to solve problems because it's highly effective that way. Often use cross-functional teams, definitely. This is that matrix idea. And also project teams are convened for a special task. Again, we want to accomplish something. We bring the people in that would be able to assist us do that. If you gave it to a department, they'd have to work on their portion. They'd then pass it to another department. And of course, the next thing you know, you'd be being buried under the ground 60 or 70 years later, and they still wouldn't have finished that project. But a project can call people in as they need them. And that's one of the advantages of a team. And here it gives us a fairly good idea as to a team environment. So the structure uses cross-functional teams. Once again, we're bringing in people to that team that are going to make that project move forward very quickly. Again, this is fundamentally a matrix, but it's called a team environment. Some of the potential advantages of a team structure. We have good communications. That's probably one of the best areas we can talk about. Eliminates any difficulties with communications and decision making. You have the people who you brought into the team because they had the information you needed, and they can all communicate with one another. So instead of one person trying to figure it out and then pass it to somebody else, it's a very time-consuming approach. But within a team, they can all communicate during meetings and they can connect with the person they should be connecting in real time. So it really speeds up everything. Eliminates any barriers between operating departments because you're working as a group or a collective. You're not working independently as a division or a department where maybe you don't communicate with other people. Improves morale because you are connecting with one another, greater sense of involvement and identification because you have a voice and you can communicate with your peers that you're working with, and they're from different departments. Also increases enthusiasm for work. You feel more validated, and you also feel like you're participating in some way or another. Improving quality and also the speed of decision making. You're connecting with one another. It's very similar to what's excuse me, what's happening right now in this class. You have 3 people, and each one of you has the ability to chat amongst one another. You have the ability to speak out to one another. You have the ability to respond to one another in real time. But if you were in departments that were totally separate, it would be like having 3 separate team meetings. The bad part is you would talk to the people in your team, but you wouldn't necessarily waste your time talking to somebody from another team until, of course, you got around to it. So this is why teams are really kind of valuable when you come right down to it. So improving the performance, increasing the enthusiasm because people really feel like they're part of what's going on. The disadvantages, of course, is once again the 2 boss and who am I loyal to? Is it my regular manager or is it to the team? Okay, some teams do not have leaders. However, I strongly recommend that all teams have at least one lead person who is given authority to break up arguments, to break up content, and put it together again and then resubmit it to the group. You need to have people who take a lead position. But loyalties really do get challenged here. Because remember, you are being paid by another manager and you're working as a team with other departments. So who are you loyal to, the other departments or yours? Excessive time spent in meetings. Meetings are killers of time. When we were talking about managers, and one of the issues managers have is they're in constant constant meetings from time to time, and it really eats up their time. This is why they do a lot of work from home. So when it's actually a team environment, you have just regular employees part of it, they're going to spend a lot of time connecting with their team members. And it really does take quite a bit of time away from your regular duties. And by the way, when you're a part of a team, you're still working on your regular duties. So this is not that they just gave you time off permanently. You're still doing your regular job as well. Effective use of time depends on the quality of interpersonal relationships and also group dynamics and team management. And that team management is actually quite important. You need to have somebody leading the group in a direction which is conducive to what the team is trying to accomplish. The dynamics, the group dynamics, this is a peculiarity. It can be to the advantage or it can be to the disadvantage. Again, it really depends on what is happening within that particular team. The biggest, let's say the biggest problem for a team, and it is a big one, is ego. So many people believe they have the best knowledge, the best idea, and they're not open-minded. So they often get into arguments in teams. You need to be open-minded and highly flexible. When you work in a team, you're not going to get your way all the time. You're going to have to become subservient to the general philosophy of the team as a whole, and you're going to have to work with them. And this is something I often notice with students when you work in teams, that sometimes the teams become really dysfunctional really fast. Now, you guys are very lucky because you've been basically in the marketing teams and they've been really small sizes. In other words, they haven't been 20, 30 students. But whenever there's more than, let's say, 15 students, the first thing I notice is that the team leaders come up to me and beg to be taken off the team. They, they always beg to get off the team, and I'm not joking. They really do. They constantly ask, can I be removed from the team? And the reason is because of the infighting, and it's just pure ego. It really is. Team members sometimes feel I have a better idea and you should be following my decisions. So this is something that really the dynamics within a team can actually tear it apart. But it always breaks down to just one fundamental element, and that's ego. You just can't get over yourself. So unfortunately, we recognize that in classrooms, the bad part of this is you'll end up working for somebody and you're going to run into the same thing. Sometimes people don't learn. Network structure is also a newer philosophy. Central core that is linked through networks of relationships with outside contractors, suppliers, and also essential services. The days of just using the team you have within your company are gone. You have to stretch out. No company has all the information that they need in order to move forward. You often notice that the companies, especially the big tech companies, the reason they move forward is that they're smart enough to go outside looking for the knowledge vendors, the people with knowledge, and they bring them in as assistants or contractors, or they bring them in as advisors or something. And that really helps the organization grow. So if you have a network, a really good network, and you can pick up a phone and call somebody, then you've really got a good thing going for you. I did give you an example. I don't remember which course it was, but a friend of mine, he had a serious problem with a compressor. They had one of those big giant compressors that takes an entire little building by itself. And that was to run all the industrial machinery. A couple of employees got drunk, decided to take all the oil out of it, and of course it seized, and that was $1 million machine. And the guy who owned the building, which was really fascinating, is an older fella. He just took his cell phone out. He made one call to a friend. And the next thing we knew, a truck came up a few hours later from Toronto, and it had a brand new compressor on it. So these are things that can happen. Networks are really important to keep your business afloat and also give you the information you needed. Own only core components and use strategic alliances for outsourcing. This is a lesson that's difficult to learn. I learned it the hard way. I really did learn it a very hard way. You only have what you need. And when you need something else, somebody else has it. Don't go out looking for it. Just go and get them to do it for you. In other words, if you have competitors and they have the equipment and the ability to do something, connect with them, get them working with you. Never give up the profit, just give up a little bit of it to them. So it kind of gives us an idea here, network structure for a web-based retail business. That's a little business. We have information technology, the business core. It's mail order, lawn and deck furniture. You can sell anything you want online. So it has port of entry warehousing and also distribution company. I can give you many examples of that. National accounting and finance management firms. They can do your work for you. Why should you hire somebody? And other home furnishing firms sharing mail order catalogs and websites. You can sell somebody else's product as well. Furniture design studios. All of these different elements, offshore manufacturing, you don't have to manufacture it, get somebody else to do it for you. If you don't have the equipment, but you have the let's say the knowledge or the wherewithal to actually acquire customers, but you don't have the production capability and you don't have the distribution, somebody else does. And you can always connect with them. This is the network philosophy. And a lot of companies do this simply because prices are expensive for some things. I gave you an example of a tractor. Used to be tractors you pick up for almost nothing. And nowadays, you want one of those combines, the little ones, they're $1 million. And then if you want all the hardware that you track behind it, you're looking at 2 million, 3 million. So this is why farmers run into serious issues financially. So again, you can bring in the elements as you need them and only if you need them. So some of the major advantages with the network structure, and this is the newer structure again, like teams and also networks. Firms can operate with fewer full-time employees. It's difficult sometimes, especially if you don't have the customer base, to have full-time employees or a lot of them. And less complex internal systems. In other words, we don't have as many departments, as many divisions, or as many disciplines to kind of manage. We have maybe 1 or 2 or 3. And then, of course, we hire other firms to do the work for us. Reducing overhead costs and also increasing operational efficiency. We do this as well. And also permit operations across greater distances. Maybe I can't do something because of the limitations of distance. So I hire somebody somewhere else under my rules and my regulations to finish something for me, let's say 10,000 miles away. But they're able to do it because I'm still controlling it. So this is the network idea. But there are disadvantages to every structural design, and a manager needs to be aware of these as well. The biggest issue is going to be control. So control and coordination problems may arise from network complexity. Remember, you're not totally in control sometimes of some of the organizations or individuals you connect with, and therefore they may be doing their own thing. Many companies who have tried to do business with, well, let's just say China, for instance, with many companies in China, they have a different philosophy. The companies in China, they worry about their biggest customer. So if you have an order and it was supposed to be delivered, let's say in a month, and they get a big customer who wants it as quickly as possible, they basically forget you exist and you're kind of screwed. And this is unfortunate, but a lot of companies run into those issues with different networks that they have created. This is a disadvantage. You lose control. You don't have positive control. They're not your employees. Potential loss of control over, let's say, the outsourcing, potential lack of loyalty among infrequently used contractors. They're going to work for and be very happy with the people that they spend a lot of hours with and they make a living from. They're not going to worry too much about you if you're only hiring them maybe once every 6 months. Excessively aggressive outsourcing can be dangerous. You definitely want to make sure you have the core components and that you're very careful who you do business with. Sometimes trying to get the lowest price is not the smartest thing to do. Sometimes the lowest price comes with the possibility of non-compliance. In other words, not even living up to the expectations. Boundaryless organizations. I've met a lot of people in this category. Eliminating internal boundaries among subsystems and external boundaries with the external environment. A combination of team and network structures with the addition of temporariness. In other words, it only exists for a short period of time, and then you connect with other people. So it's not something that is written in stone that you can only deal with certain individuals. I've known a lot of people who actually run businesses. The bad part of this is they're single individuals. They're just smart. They've recognized that there are people around the world who are looking for opportunities, and they're willing to hire them for a quick little project. But they hire people in different countries so that they can create virtual teams. And they will produce a product for them or produce something for them. And then they actually profit from it. It's a really smart way of doing business. Of course, the people in other countries make a living for the period that they're part of the team. And then all of a sudden, of course, they're doing something else. A close friend of mine actually used to do this with an internet company. They actually used to do service for small businesses. They did the IT portion, but how they actually did it, because he had no knowledge of IT whatsoever, absolutely nothing. He just was very challenged to connect a computer, didn't know how to connect a printer to the computer, but he discovered very quickly he could hire people in India to do it online. So he actually found out that when voice over IP came into existence for us through Cisco, he actually made a contract with them and contacted some people in India, and whoever bid the right bid actually won. And it was a group of 20 students who spoke perfect English, but were really good at IT. And they actually do all of the communications and support. So you get a telephone number which goes through the internet. You don't even know it's going through the internet. And whoever answers in India will solve your problem. They'll walk you through the process. Smart idea, really smart. And this is what we're talking about. It's borderless, it's boundaryless, it's pure networking in a sense. So absence of a hierarchy, there is no hierarchy. And also empowerment of team members, well, you give them bonuses, benefits, and a variety of other things. And technology utilization, this is how it's possible to begin with. Acceptance of impermanence. They recognize that they may be working for a month and that's the end of it. It's a project. Some of them may work for a year or two, and then that's the end of it. So they have to look for something else. So this is where Kutisha could actually be creating something similar to Mary Kay. This would be the wig of the month. So you could start off with purple and then have blue a week later and have it. By the way, there's a company here in Canada, was started in Quebec, and they do something really similar. I'm absolutely shocked by what they sell. They actually sell women's underwear, but they don't sell it. It's a membership. You sign up for a year, and every month they send you some little card, and they send you a pair of underwear, but they're different. They have different styles, different designs. So it's underwear by the month. It's really a fascinating idea, and it's working. Okay, the last time I heard of them, they're already up to like $175,000 of income. So, I mean, there are people out there who will buy anything. Chocolate of the month, or maybe it's steak of the month. There's a company that does that as well. It's really interesting, some of the ideas that people are coming up with. So this boundaryless organization, it also really helps creativity. I've met people in my life that literally floor me. They have so many brilliant, absolutely brilliant ideas. I watched a guy on YouTube, just kind of by accident. I saw this little thing about a little computerized machine, and I thought, okay, I'll watch it for 10 minutes. And this guy took apart bits and pieces of everything from nails to little motors and stuff, and he built a computerized machine out of nothing, cardboard and a little foam board. It was really mind-boggling that this creativity actually is out there. It's just a question of connecting with it. And you got to keep in mind, borderless is not a bad thing. Also, knowledge sharing is both a good and also essential component. You may remember the guy who jumped from near space, and this was the guy for Red Bull who jumped out, broke the sound barrier, falling from near space, so to speak, all the way down to the ground. Did have a parachute though, but he was going at the sound of speed and speed of sound, I should say. And it was really fascinating to watch. Millions of people watched it. But the people who actually helped him develop the suit, the parachute, and everything else, even the little capsule, they were from all over the world. He had to get people with real skill, and they come from everywhere. Just to give you an idea, there's a couple of German teenagers. You can even look them up. I get a kick out of these guys. They're twins, and they take anything. They took a bathtub and they made it into a submarine. Even though the first time it went into the lake, it actually sunk. But eventually they fixed it and they were able to use it as a submarine. It's absolutely amazing what creativity is really out there. Virtual organizations, again, there's really no organization. It's just somebody is controlling the efforts of other people. So a special form of boundaryless organization, and I know people who run these virtual organizations, operate in a shifting network of external alliances that are engaged as needed. We only need you for a short period of time, so we hire you for that. I'll even give you an example. There was a fella in the United States. He wanted to have a blog, but really, you know, some people are good at writing and some people, they never listened to their teachers when they were in grade school. So they don't write very well. And he actually put a little request out on the internet and he got hundreds of people replying to him. He pays $10 to a person to write a blog. He then posts it and maybe he spends, you know, maybe $30 a week and he puts 3 new posts in from 3 different people. They do the post, he pays them $10 a week. Well, the next week maybe find somebody else. But he now has thousands of posts. And the last time I was looking at him, he actually is thinking of taking those posts and putting them into a book. So he has enough information in one particular area that he can make a book out of it. And it's not even his writing. So it also gives you boundaryless organizations. And here's some examples here. Internal boundaries, the big pyramid, elimination of as people work together as needed. And then, of course, we can release them when we don't need them. So maybe you have a special project and you need extra salespeople. Well, here we have time 1, time 2, time 3. External boundaries vary as alliances change. So maybe today I need more salespeople and maybe I need production capability. But maybe the next month I don't need the salespeople anymore, but now I need to have purchasing and I need to have the production. And then, of course, the third period of time, now I need salespeople again. I also need purchasing and I need distribution. And also I need to have the production. So it's as you need somebody, that's when you bring them in. So we have Quetisha here who likes to wear different hair or fur or whatever it is. So, you have a picture here with a purple hairdo. I used to have a student that changed her hairstyle and hair color almost weekly. And some of the colors, sometimes it was even the rainbow, which was really freaky. However, you have purple, but maybe what you do is you take a couple of pictures of different colors and then you ask people, would you like to sell it? And you give them a commission for every one they sell. So they can actually have a home party, you know, buy a bottle of whiskey or something and have a home party, invite 20 or 30 women with some money in their pockets or their purses. And each one of them can auction it. So you can auction them out. You can do all kinds of things. But once again, maybe you don't need those people all the time. You need somebody who can do mailing. So you get them to mail it out for you. There's so many things you can do. And once again, that's the idea of putting the pieces together through networking. So the next question is, how are organizational designs changing the workplace? Well, we recognize that there are some major changes taking place, and there are two areas I want you to memorize. The first one is called mechanistic, and the second one is called organic. They are definitely 1000% will come up on your final. So mechanistic design and also organic design. The mechanistic is, think of it as like a watch or a chronometer or something highly mechanized. It's very, very specific. It functions with extreme precision. So it has very predictable goals. They're definable and also centralized authority. There is no ambiguity. You know exactly who to go to. Many rules and procedures, very bureaucratic, okay? And narrow span of control. What that simply means is that a manager only has the number of people they can manage. This is a very important concept for managers. And I'll give you an example of that a little bit later. Specialized tasks, very specific. You do one thing and one thing only. You flip the hamburger, that's it. You don't touch the fries. And also few teams and task forces. You do your function, everybody does their function, it works perfectly. It's just like a watch. Every part has its place and every part has its part to play. Also formal and impersonal means of coordination, very, very autocratic, very specific. Just think of it as a highly tuned, highly precisionalized instrument. That's what mechanistic really is. Organic is more flexible. So we could say mechanistic is not flexible, organic is highly flexible. So adapts to the goals. And in this case here, instead of predictable goals, very specifically understood, it's adapting to it. No matter what it is, you'll figure it out. You'll find a way of doing it. It's very adaptable. Decentralized authority, it doesn't come from the top. It comes from whoever is closest to making the decision. And also few rules and procedures, wide span of control. Because it's very flexible, people can handle a lot more people because they're usually not very specific tasks. So you don't have a lot of skill in that particular area. You have skill kind of general. And also shared tasks, you don't do just one thing, you do whatever needs to be done. And it's usually very simple work. Many teams and also task forces, they do adapt very strongly towards the team and network environment. Informal and personal means of coordination. Again, there is no set rule. It can be very flexible. So once again, I want you to remember mechanistic, high precision, and also very mechanical in nature. Whereas organic is very adaptable, very flexible, very organic. The names are really good. And it gives you an idea here by looking at these two sides, the bureaucratic style, which is the mechanistic, and it is highly predictable. This is for goals. They know exactly what's going to happen. Whereas on the other side of the coin, for the adaptive side, the organic, they literally are going to adapt to whatever the conditions need to be. They're going to make it happen. So each one of these really does follow the namesake, the mechanistic and also the organic. Organic, very flexible, mechanistic to be very, very definitive. So the contemporary organizations and the trend that is taking place in this particular area is that they have a short chain of command. It's usually more of a flat organization. A bureaucracy has a pyramidal structure where it has a higher level of management, and as it slowly goes layer by layer down towards the customer, it gets wider and wider. More and more people are involved. So you may start with a president, and then all of a sudden you have several senior executives, and then each one of the senior executives has so many managers. Those managers may have middle managers, so many of those, and it just gets wider and wider and wider. So short chains of command means few levels, very few. Less unity of command, wider span of control. You can control more people, more delegation and also empowerment, and also decentralization with centralization. This is one of the beautiful factors here. And also reduced use of staff. Let's take a look. Shorter chain of command. So the idea is to flatten the organization a bit. We don't want to have so many layers. One of the things that happened during the 1980s because of a recession in Canada and the United States is that most middle management jobs were eliminated. One of the problems that had occurred since the Second World War is when people came back, a lot of them went into a variety of areas, management, and of course, they went into all levels. The problem was you ended up with a manager having 3 or 4 people that they were managing, and it didn't make a lot of sense. Most managers hire maybe 30 or 40 people within their department, but some managers had only 1 or 2 people. So they had to eliminate quite a few of them, and this made the organization flatter. In other words, we eliminated a lot of that middle management. So as a result, you get a flatter organization. And it also speeds up the communications channel as well. So cutting unnecessary levels of management is what basically took place. And this also took place in Japan as well, all during the 1970s and 80s. Less unity of command is a very interesting concept. Each person in an organization should report to only one person, not 2, not 3, not 5, but 1, just one person. So organizations are using more cross-functional teams. Well, we talked about that a little bit earlier. The teams are something that is going to broaden even more so as time goes on. But the paradox here for it is that organizations still need to have a single point of, let's say, reporting so that you know exactly who your manager actually is. Even within a team environment, you have to be aware of that. And that's an obstacle. Organizations are becoming more customer conscious. Well, they're beginning to realize that the customer has the money. And the customer can go anywhere they want to go. So if you decide to stand outside of a store and barter with them, and they're not willing to barter, then you can go somewhere else. And that's what companies are beginning to learn. That once upon a time, there were only a couple of big players, and they could basically tell you what to do, when to do it, and how high to jump. But nowadays, they're jumping, and they're the ones who are doing what you want them to. Span of control is an extremely important area for managers. It's something that you should be very cognizant of. A manager can only deal with the number of people that is reasonable based on the skill set. And I'm defining the skill set as an important element here, because if a person is highly skilled, you got to keep in mind, managing is not just sitting in an office, doing paperwork. It's also reviewing people, talking to your staff, doing meetings, also checking up on work that's being done. And when you have too many people, it becomes impossible. Because remember, there's always going to be people coming in, breaking into your office and asking you questions, and you'll have meetings you have to go to. So how many people can you theoretically take care of? If everybody is cleaning windows, it's not a difficult thing because they're all doing the same thing. So you could deal with 100 of them because it's always the same thing. But when they're doing dissimilar tasks, it becomes a challenge, a major challenge. So the span of control is how many people. And there are two possibilities here, a wide span of control or a very slender, let's say a small span of control. It's really a question of can you handle a lot of people or very few? Again, dependent on how much skill is involved, how many activities are required by that individual. So the number of persons directly reporting to a manager. And also, many organizations are shifting to a wider span of control. Well, the only way you can actually do that is you can reduce the complexity of the job itself. When you begin to remove the complexity, then the job becomes easier, and it's easier for a manager to deal with many people doing similar tasks. Managers have the responsibility for a larger number of subordinates who operate with less direct supervision. One of the key elements for any manager, it doesn't matter who you are, when you become a manager, you want to make sure your staff know what they're supposed to do. And not only do they know what they're supposed to do, you hired them so that they could actually achieve what you hired them for. So they need to be well trained in that particular area, and they need to have the skills necessary, because then it becomes easier for you to manage a larger number of people. So this is really an important area for managers. More delegation and empowerment. The first thing you do as a new manager is you look for your replacements. And if there's two of them, you get both of them and you start giving them things that they can do. And these are things that you should be doing as mundane tasks that they can begin to do, and it kind of offloads the burden, so to speak, of many of the things that just simply just take up time. So it's the process of entrusting work to other people and make it a project for them. And oddly enough, most people are really happy when you give them something that makes them special. In other words, they have a project to do, or they have a task that nobody else has. Giving them the right to make the decisions and take action, well, you only give it to them because they can handle it. Never give a task to somebody who can't handle it. It's just a nightmare. There are 3 steps to delegation. Please remember the 3 steps. Assign the responsibility. Again, make sure that they understand what the ramifications are, what the expectations are. Grant authority for them to make the decisions. You still probably will want to make the, let's say, large decisions, should there be any, but minor decisions, just go ahead and do it. Get it done. And also create accountability. Require others to report back on whatever results need to be achieved. So these are things you definitely want to make sure are taking place. A common management failure is fear. Okay, it's unwillingness to delegate. It's fear. That's all it really is. It's just fear. You're afraid that that other person is going to shine and you're not going to shine, and people will see that you're doing nothing. That's not the case. But unfortunately, for many managers, they do become very shy of allowing other people to accomplish things. They always want to take precedent and say, I'm the one who did it, it's my department. But, you know, a really good leader is rarely seen. They're always in the background, pushing their people forward. They're giving them the tools, they're letting them accomplish things. Microsoft would not be as big as it is today. None of the big corporations would ever be as large as they are if they didn't have leaders who stood in the background and said, this is what we want to do. I hired you, go and do it, make it happen. That includes Apple, it includes all the companies. So managers are delegating more, and they're beginning to find more ways of empowering people at all levels. Remember, I said this just a few minutes ago, when people are given something that others don't have, they all of a sudden seem like they're really important in a company and they feel good about themselves. They may gripe a little bit, but they oftentimes are really happy that you gave it to them. And sometimes just by saying, I'm giving this to you because I know you're the only one who can really get it done right. And of course, they will do just that for you. So one of the other things that happens in an organization is eventually the organization has to subdivide itself. It has to express itself to the communities where it's operating. Maybe a central office is in one location, but it's serving customers, let's say, all over Canada. So I have to have offices all over the place. So this is where we get into decentralization with centralization. A central authority making all the rules. So as it points out here, centralization, concentration of authority. They're the ones making the decisions. It comes from the top and it goes all the way down to the bottom. If you want to, let's say, make a change within your location, you have to request that they give you permission. So it has to go to the top and all the way down. Decentralization is when authority is proportioned and given out to those locations. So dispersing the decision-making authority to all levels of the organization. In other words, the senior executives don't know it all. They definitely know the direction, but it's up to you to figure out how to make that happen. So they give you the authority at your level, and maybe in Toronto, we give the Toronto location authority to make decisions for Toronto. In Quebec, we give the Quebec group their ability to make their own decisions. But we still define at the corporate office the direction of the company. It's up to them to make the right decisions to make it happen. And the trends that are taking place, well, deregulation and empowerment contributing to more decentralization in organizations. Let's face it, delegation within an organization is really important. And not only is it important, but every location that you end up with is going to have different rules, different regulations, different laws will apply, different personality types, different regions. So you need to have the ability to make your own decisions, be able to implement the projects that you believe will help you the most. So reducing use of staff, the bad part of this is kind of a movement in a direction that's not going to end. The problem here, it could end. I'm going to just hold off for a second on that statement because of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is trying to isolate the United States so that they're producing and manufacturing everything they need first. So we could say that maybe it won't reduce totally, but it is reducing. So reduce of staff, specialized staff, providing special problem-solving experience. That's what we're really looking for nowadays. Anybody who does something outside of that, we can contract them, or we can get part-time workers. We don't need to have full-time 40 hours a week people. And unfortunately, that's the trend right now, is moving in that particular direction. Personal staff, once again, assist to, in other words, helping out, positions that provide special support to managers. There's an increase in this particular area simply because managers are finding themselves a little inundated and overwhelmed. So they often have to have assistance in one form or another. I think you probably noticed even at Trios, some people have moved around into these support type positions. Stephen, for instance, is now Uzma's assistant, and there's other changes that are taking place. Organizational trends, organizations are seeking increased operating efficiency by employing fewer staff, but highly specialized. So they're looking for people with high levels of skill sets. We just lost somebody. So That was quick. Fantastic. So I have a question for you. Does this make sense to you? Everything we've talked about so far, divide and conquer? Wakey, wakey.
I'm here.
Okay. Fantastic. We got to move that computer 20 feet closer. So does it make sense so far, by the way?
Yes, it does, sir.
Okay. So in the chat, I'm putting 3 new files. Just loading them right now. Fantastic. So one of these is HO6, which is the handout number 6. And this is the one after the other one I gave you. In this case here, you're looking at different businesses. And of course, it gives you quite a bit of information about each one of them. Okay. There's business A, there's business B, and then of course there are a number of questions. So listing the types of departments you would expect to find there in A and B. What I want you to do is to take the time to read the first 2 about company A and also company B. And then I'd like you to kind of go through each of these questions, part A and also part B. So part 1 and part 2. And there are extensions here as well, defining these. This will help you a great deal when it comes to your final on Thursday of next week. Remember, you're losing Friday, so really you need to start focusing a great deal on this stuff. And I'm also going to attach one more file. And that additional file is, let me just open it up here, is the review questions for the final next week. Since you're losing a day, I'm going to give you this in advance. So let me just pull this up here. Whoops. Fantastic. So there's the review questions as well. Phenomenal. And we still have a number of chapters to do yet, but it'll start to focus you a little bit in the right direction. We still have 3 more chapters, chapter 11, also chapter number 14, chapter 16. So it jumps a little bit back and forth. Does that make sense so far? Desiree, you're back. Good show.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, guys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you go. It's a little bit early today, but it'll give you a chance to go through the review and also through that HO6 and do those 2 assignments of A and B. So in other words, company 1, company 2. Make sense?
Yes, it does.
Fantastic. Yep. Have a good weekend, guys.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
You too.
Bye.
Have a good weekend, everyone.